Welcome to Persons of Interest, a podcast featuring interviews with interesting people doing interesting things, diving into careers, personal stories, life lessons, and more. Here's your host, Derek Dockett.
Welcome to another edition of the Persons of Interest podcast. And my guest in this episode might not be a household name, but for especially Missouri Valley Conference fans, college basketball fans, he definitely is someone on social media that you may have seen a tweet from, especially around this time of the year, once we get into February, heading into March, before we get to conference tournament action. But Matt Hackman, I'm not sure why you started doing it, how you started doing it, what made you start doing it. But first of all, thanks for hopping on the podcast with me. I really appreciate it. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
So Matt has the most unique Twitter account I have noticed because, I went through your tweets. You only share your tournament seeding probabilities. Like every once in a while you tap into something, but you mostly respond to people that have questions. But it's mostly just you tweeting out your tournament seeding probabilities. Is that correct?
That's accurate. Yeah, I have other opinions, but I feel like the people want the tournament seeding probabilities, and it's something I'm happy to share with the masses. And if people have questions on it, happy to respond on Twitter. Yeah.
So I got to start. Why in the world did you start doing this? And what popped into your head and said, you know what, I think I'll start running through these spreadsheets and these formulas and everything and share these online?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So it extended back from when I was in college, and it was coming into the last weekend of the conference season. I'm a UNI Panther alum, and me and my friends, roommates, were trying to figure out, hey, should we head down to St. Louis on Thursday night? Is there a chance that they're going to play that night? Should we go Friday? What time on Friday? What might they play? And we figured out, hey, there's 5 total conference games left. We can work this out. Let's figure out the final 32 scenarios, which team or what needs to happen this weekend to figure out what time our team's playing in the tournament in St. Louis. And with that, it was just a little do it on a piece of paper, figured out by hand, maybe a little bit of a spreadsheet here or there, but just something for myself, for my friends like that. And it grew a little bit from there. It was, I'll share this with a few other, Panther friends of mine, and like on a message board. And then it got out from there to the conference message board a little bit. And then my professional career got me into a lot of heavy financial modeling, and Excel skills were really taking off. And it was great because it worked both ways. I learned a lot of Excel tricks for work by doing some of this college basketball seeding scenarios, and vice versa. Some of my work helped into some of the formulas that I wanted to put into the seeding scenarios there. Like I said, it just took off from there. I started with just the final 32 scenarios, and then we went back another set of games, and now you got 1,000 scenarios, and it's tried to come up with a fancier little graph to provide these to the masses. And then at some point, it just got to the point where, you know what, let's just run simulations for the whole season. And so now I started with the Valley. I had quite a few friends. I'm based in Iowa, so a lot of Big 10 and Big 12 friends here. Also, Omaha is fairly close, so some Creighton friends decided, hey, when we move to the Big East, can you keep up with us there? Can you help me there a little bit? So added that. So now I've got 4 conferences that I try to provide conference tourney seeding scenarios for during the conference season. And I found that Twitter just seems to be a pretty easy medium for me to, take a little snapshot of the graph, and then I'll send it out in a tweet, and whoever wants to tweet or comment on it, follow me back, whatever, that's great. This is the way I'll get the information out to the people that want it.
So all because you wanted to know the best possible time when to buy tickets to go to a game at a conference tournament. It's now turned into this.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Started from some pretty humble beginnings for a poor college student that was trying to save a little bit of money on not buying the full pass, sure, and not having to spend an extra hotel night if he didn't need to. But
that's phenomenal. So I got to ask now, since I'm no longer working at the Missouri Valley Conference, but I'm familiar with, you've been doing this for a while. How long does it take to do this? Because for those that don't know, the world of sports information, when these types of things come up, it's time consuming and it's tedious. Mike Kern, who is the current Missouri Valley Conference men's basketball PR person and still a great friend of mine, my former boss, he gets asked that question all the time when it gets close to Arch Madness season for the Valley of what are the possible seeding scenarios. And he always jokes around, we've got 2 billion scenarios right now. So ask me when I get down to 50.
Yep.
So you take the time to do this week by week as conference season goes on. We're now into February. You've put out your February 3rd update as we were recording here this evening. How long does it take you to do this in your Excel spreadsheet format?
Yeah, so it's not too bad. Every year I do a little bit of updating to the spreadsheet just to make it a little bit more efficient. But there's a few things I pull in. It's you need a little bit of a ratings for each of the teams. So I pull those from Sagarin, which is updated daily. So that's just an auto pull off it comes in the same standard format every time. I update the teams that have won and lost, and then I update the net rankings because that is the third level tiebreaker for the Valley. And really after that, I hit a button and the macro, it runs the simulations and it runs itself. And it takes a couple minutes to run all the calculations, but it spits out the fancy little graph that you guys see on Twitter. And I just copy that. I post that into Imgur and get the image of that and put it on Twitter. And that's about it. So it really is down to science. Yes, it's down to a science right now. It's not all that time consuming. It's when people start digging into why is this team higher than this team, or what's this? And so then it's just a dig in a little bit on this team's rating is this, or this team has this tiebreaker over this, which I'm happy to do. I love digging into it, but the computer runs it like it runs itself. It's pretty automated, and I trust the build so that I think what it spits out is always going to generally be accurate.
Conference from conference different, because obviously membership, tournament format, tiebreakers could be different. That created any challenges?
Absolutely. Even the Valley is keeping me on my toes. They change their tiebreakers like every 2 to 3 years here. When I started, it was the PowerPoints, I believe, which is like you got more points for winning on the road versus the top team, and then at home, and then second highest team, and back and forth. And then there was a RPI and non-conference strength of schedule and net, and then last year there was the modified with like you have to reach a certain number of games, and if you didn't, you could take losses to accumulate to get to the minimum threshold of games. Now, luckily that didn't come into play for the Valley, but I had to build that in there just in case there was some team that had a multitude of cancellations. That same number of cancellations went across a lot of the other conferences as well. So, for instance, the Big East started with a nice even 10 teams when I started doing it, and then they added UConn, so now they have 11 teams. So that update the formulas, change the charts, change the graphs. Once you get it built, and once they don't change their tiebreakers from year to year, it's pretty straightforward. Teams adding teams, or conferences adding teams, changing their tiebreakers, stuff like that just keeps me on my toes. So actually looking forward to the Valley next year here, where we're moving from 10 up to 12. So that'll be a whole new situation, because now we don't have the full, or rumor has it won't be a full double round robin anymore. It might just be 20 conference games. And if that's the case, there will surely be new tiebreakers that go along with it as well. Yeah, it's interesting. Big Ten has 14 teams. That's a significantly larger spreadsheet that takes quite a bit longer to run, but it's still fairly automated.
You keep up with all these conferences just in general? Like, I imagine you got to be like me. I'm a general college basketball fan. Like right now, as we're talking, I've got Arizona and UCLA on in the background on mute. It's just because I'm just a college hoops junkie. But taking in all this, doing all these spreadsheets, are you following all these games as much, or just sticking with Valley games, UNI, Drake, and whatnot? I'm
definitely a Valley fan. Those games are going to trump most of the other games that I'm watching. However, growing up in Iowa, I grew up a Hawkeye fan prior to attending college at UNI. So I'll follow Iowa quite a bit. Being here in Des Moines, a little over a half hour from Ames, so there's Iowa State fans everywhere here. And I'm less than 2 hours from Omaha, so I've got plenty of Creighton fans there. So I I love the way the Big East lays out on Saturdays, where it's usually 5 back-to-back games. If you're a hardcore Big East fan, that's just a gold mine right there. But yeah, no, I'm right with you. I'm a college basketball junkie. Like I will throw on ESPN Plus at 10 p.m. at night and watch Cal State Bakersfield play San Diego. I'm all in on any random game, and it's good stuff.
Yeah. So when you brought up the Valley, next year their membership changing. They're going to add Loyola's going to be leaving, Belmont, Murray State, and Illinois, Chicago, UIC joining the league. They'll have 12 members in the league. So you just said it. I imagine tiebreakers will probably change because I think the commissioners already said in an interview with Andy Katz that they intend on playing 20 conference games. Now, what that looks like, if it's divisional, who knows what that means for you. I guess you won't know until they actually, announce what the tiebreakers are. But what does that do you think, based on some of the things you've done with the other conferences, in terms of how, I'll put it this way. I'm looking at a tweet you had with an Illinois State fan that asked about their 85% of Thursday or not. When you think about a team not having to play everybody that's in the conference, can you explain in terms how the formula may or may not affect a team that doesn't play everybody, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think the calculation is still going to be similar. You have your 20 games, and your winning percentage in the games that you are given is what is the first determinant of your seed position. I think as Valley fans, I think we're a little lucky to just have you will play each team home, you will play each team away. It's just very straightforward. It's an easy way of thinking. The Big Ten already has that, where some teams you play twice, some teams you only play once. And the first tiebreaker is still just winning percentage. So how well you've done against the schedule you've been given. And then from there, the tiebreakers can get into a little bit of different, like mini round robins versus the teams you're tied with. But sometimes you've played a different number of games than the other teams you're tied with. So sometimes you got to skip that tiebreaker and go on to the next. And it's interesting kind of how that goes. But yeah, I'm sure I will end up doing some analysis as well. And I'm sure many other outlets will do the same analysis. Here's your 20 teams you're playing. How does your schedule compare to what other team in the conference? Because you might end up with playing the bottom half of the league twice, and you only have to play the top one or two or the top couple teams just once. That's pretty expected to be an easier schedule than somebody that would have to play both or twice against all the top teams and only get, one or two of those bottom feeders just that one time. It's still going to boil down to your record is what your record is, but some teams may have a little easier go at that record than others.
What's been the craziest sort of result you've seen out of a spreadsheet at any given time? Like when you've seen, boy, we're here and it's February 15th and there are still a total of X amount of seeding possibilities. And boy, this league has got tons of parity. It's wacky right now. This is how wacky this league is. Anybody can beat anybody on a given day. Look at this spreadsheet. And that tells you the story. Can you think of a time? I know the Valley's had some years like that recently and whatnot.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that with the Valley. It is amazing how every year it comes down to, it is mid-February and this team could finish anywhere from 2nd to 10th.
Right.
Like it's kind of crazy.
On the last weekend of the season sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. There's one in particular, and I'm not going to have the stats completely right on this, but it was somewhere around 7-8 years ago, Indiana State, and it was the very last game. And in fact, it was the last game on the last day because all the other games had finished already. And I think it came down to a last second shot by them. And if they made it, they were the 3 seed, but I believe they missed and ended up at the 8 seed.
Goodness.
Like just top 3 versus bottom 3 based on one shot in the last game of this conference season. Like it was just one of those that's completely nuts how the tiebreakers would fall, but it is really exciting. I look at a lot of these games in a different sense. I have these groupings of teams now of these teams are trying to move from the group here to the group here and open up their options at the top seeds and try to avoid these, for Valley fans here, the Thursday night games. Yeah. But yeah, it's always fun. And I love it's especially that last week or two. This is wild. Like my team, based on how the shots fall here in these next couple of games, could finish top 3 to bottom 3, and so much changes. And you're so in on every game. Like you're like, I need random team X to beat random team Y, and I have no part of that game, but that opens up a whole new set of seeding scenarios for my team, and it's fun. I love it, and that's why I love doing this. Is I love being able to supply that to random fans from all across the conference and the countries. I want them to be able to have rooting interest in all these other random games that aren't their own games, and I love it. I nerd out with Excel and college basketball, and this meshes the two together.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. Any requests to do additional conferences come your way? Or have you just been like, Heisman, I got enough on my plate. I'm doing these right here and leave me alone.
That's kind of been it. I've heard from a couple Wichita State fans who obviously got hooked a little bit while being in the Valley on this. And I thought about it for a little while. And I think I looked into the American League tiebreakers, and it wasn't similar enough to one of the existing conferences that I do. So it would have had to been a full build. So to your point, I gave it the Heisman. But that would be a thing. Like if there was another, for instance, 10-team conference that has a double round robin and pretty standard tiebreakers similar to the Valley, or the Big 12s is actually a little bit different, have that build completely done already. I couldn't tell you the name of the conference, but for instance, like the Mountain West or something said, hey, our tiebreakers are exactly the same as this conference that you do. I'm like, okay, it wouldn't take that much to build something like that for them. Yeah. And once it's built, it pretty much runs itself. But yeah, no, I haven't had too many requests, but occasionally they trickle in. Yeah.
What are you doing with your time once we get to March Madness and college conference tournament season's over? What else are you doing?
I sit back, I relax, and who doesn't love March Madness? That's the best. I think this has allowed me to give a little more focus onto these teams in other conferences that I wouldn't typically root for. And I'm probably on just a lucky streak, but I'm gonna associate it with the fact that I do these spreadsheets. Is I've had some pretty good brackets the last couple of years. I've been doing pretty well in my March Madness pools, and I think it's just purely due to this. But
you don't have some sort of secret generator of seeding and then tying in net ranking versus opponents and winning percentage and against the spread and all this, and here's a bracket generator.
I've definitely thought about trying to pull together bracket generators like that before, but I'd be completely lying to you if I said that I hadn't thrown the teams into a spreadsheet and kind of run little simulations on who's going to win this game and who's going to advance past this. And so I've done little bits of that, but March Madness it's chaotic. You got to start by getting the right champion or the right Final Four and work back from there, but pick the upsets where you think they got the best chance. I don't know. It's college basketball. It's the best.
I got to imagine we mentioned we both watch a good amount of college basketball, but just sticking with the Valley, I guess your thoughts on how the league is going this year. Loyola still looks pretty good. Last year, Drake played very well last night. The most balanced scoring I've seen in a college basketball game, I think, forever maybe, with everyone scoring 14 or 15 points in the lineup. Northern Iowa having some ups and downs. Missouri State beating Loyola, struggling against Evansville, but still winning. They beat Southern this week. They play Loyola. It looks like it could be quite the finish, especially depending on what happens with Missouri State and Loyola on Sunday. What do you think about the Valley this year?
Yeah, you're totally right. It's definitely not a runaway by Loyola or any of the teams here. Like it feels like a 4-horse race right now. Each of those 4 teams have their high moments. Each of them have looked phenomenal. Hey, play like that, you're winning the league. Yeah. And then each of them comes back and loses one on the road to a team they probably shouldn't. And it's interesting. I've seen each of the teams play like they are just going to take it. Like they're gonna go 7-1 in the last 8 games, and it's there. And then, of course, as soon as I start feeling pretty confident about a team, that's the week they decide not to show up or lay it down at home or something like that. And I don't know. It's exciting. It's honestly, for me, I kind of root for the parity.
Yeah.
Like it makes my spreadsheets a little bit more intriguing. It's less exciting when I come into the final 32 games, and I'll give the nice colored spreadsheet of each of the 32 scenarios. And here's each of the 10 teams. And the first column is all this color because that team's locked. The second column is all this color because that team's locked. 8, 9, 10 are all set already. That's a little less exciting when it's just down to like you're determining who's going to be the 4 and who's going to be the 5, and they're going to play each other anyway. Like that's a little less exciting. I love the game. Like I love coming into it where, Indiana State could be a 3 seed or an 8 seed, all depending on their game. Nice. I love that. I think that's where the real value lies in I'm going to call it the work I do, but it's entirely just a fun hobby.
Which I still don't get, but hey, you're cranking them out, man. Kudos to you. It's fun because like I said, I had no idea why you started doing it, how long it took to do it, but I knew just like clockwork, come January, here comes this guy that's going to start tweeting these things. And then a lot of my friends are going to retweet it. I'm like, what is this? What's going on? I'm like, okay. And then it's just after looking at it, I'm like, this is all he does on his Twitter account. It's just these seeding probabilities.
That's all that Twitter account's for.
It's awesome. It's awesome. It's great work. I definitely encourage fans from the conferences, from the Big 12, Big 10, Missouri Valley, Big East, to give you a follow on Twitter to check out the seeding probabilities. Your Twitter account is at MJ Hackman, MJHackman, Matt Hackman. Matt, appreciate you taking time to talk about this. This is fun. And I guess if you had to pick right now, give me your top 3 seeds in the Valley for Arch Madness, if you had to pick right now on the spot.
Yeah, you really do put me on the spot. I always try to remain neutral in these because I'm just letting the numbers speak for themselves, but I am a fan, so I do watch. I'm going to go with Drake, Loyola, Missouri State in that order. But
so that means you're thinking Drake's going to be the regular season champion.
I think so. I think they already got the 1 win over Loyola, and they're tied with them in the standings at the moment. So I don't know. I've seen them put together some really good games. You talked about it just a little bit ago. Yep. Balanced scoring. It might also be that I'm here in Des Moines and I have Des Moines Sports Talk Radio into my everyday in the morning and evening commute. So maybe that's just shaping a bias here a little bit. But
that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. That's called living in the moment, being a fan, and all that good stuff. So it's going to be a fun ride. It's like I said, you mentioned getting the win. Missouri State's got to win over Loyola. I think you're going to have in your spreadsheet one of those scenarios that's going to come down to the last weekend because of the way things are set up. That's just my personal thought. I'm not going to go on record because I have no idea of what's going to happen. I actually do think Loyola somehow will be the 1 seed, but I'm not locked in on that yet, but we'll see. We'll see. And everyone knows I'm a Missouri State guy here too. So of course I'm rooting for Missouri State. They've already beaten Loyola at Loyola. So of course beating them in Springfield will give them an upper hand over the Ramblers in the tiebreaker.
And looked fantastic doing it. And I'm a UNI guy, and we've got 2 games against Loyola yet. So I'd like to think that they can pick one of those 2 off. So I just feel like that Loyola's got a couple trip ups on their schedule yet here. So
we'll
I don't know. Hard to say. It's hard. Yeah. It's going to be fun. I'm hoping for a fun finish. How about that?
A lot of basketball still you played. You make a trip to St. Louis for Arch Madness, I take it?
I have a few times. I'm still angling for it this year, but it's going to be a little tough. I've got a spring break trip, and I planned shortly after it, and I've got a work trip the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday prior to Arch Madness. I'm going to have to work a few favors here to convince my wife to sneak out of the house for that much longer.
I know how that goes. Trust me. I have a streak now. After being a Missouri Valley Conference staffer for a number of years, but even prior to that, as a Missouri State student, I've been to at least one Arch Madness tournament game every year since '99.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So some years, obviously more, and I've got some cheat years as I had to be there, but I've seen at least one game of every tournament since '99. Hopefully I'll be able to sneak in. Even last year, I took in a game in the midst of all our COVID craziness. Hopefully I can still get one in this year and sneak down there and see Missouri State take on somebody not on Thursday.
Right. There you go.
I think they should be clear of that, though. So
I think you're right.
Matt, I appreciate you taking the time, man. This has been fun. Looking forward to seeing how this plays out this year and following you on Twitter. Like I said, folks, give them a look. Check out the brackets, especially if you're a fan of any of these Midwestern conferences out of Division I, and see how your team may be doing. So, Matt, thanks again. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Derek. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Persons of Interest. This podcast is a personal project with the goal of sharing stories that might inspire others to create their own path. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a guest suggestion, you can reach Derek on Twitter @DDocket. This has been Persons of Interest.